I'm the drummer with the Apollos.
Hi, I'm Don. I'm a guitar player with the Apollos.
I'm Dave. I'm the rhythm guitar player with the Apollos.
I'm Tom Vorhauer. I'm the lead singer for the Apollos.
Hi, I'm Jim Price. I'm the leader and the bass player of the Apollos. Well, we actually started as a instrumental group about 1963. I happened to be sitting out on the front porch of our new home. We had moved to McLean, Virginia, and I had a brand new guitar and a big old amp, and I took it out on the front porch, and I didn't know anyone in the neighborhood, so I figured I'd just turn it up all the way and just start cranking. And as I'm cranking, I look down across the way down the hill, and I see two little skinny boys, tall and thin, coming up through the trees. They crossed the road and came on up, and I was just a wailing up there on the porches. Couldn't have been good, but it was loud, and turned out to be Dave and Don Harney over here, my lead guitarist, my rhythm guitarist. And I said, "You guys live here?" He said, "Yeah, we live down the road here from you, just across from you." I said, "You play guitars?" Don said, "Yeah, I play bass." "Oh, you play bass?" "Oh, yeah." So I said, "Dave, what do you?" He said, "I play guitar." I said, "Well, you guys get your guitars." And I said, next thing I know, there's dust and dirt flying. Those guys down the hill, they're back up there with those guitars. I don't think anybody called the police, but that's when we started. And it wasn't too long, we had a first little gig, and we'd found us a drummer, this little boy over here. And he was an ornery little kid, but he could sure whip those drums. So we asked Wayne to join us, and we started playing. I think we called ourselves the Escorts at that time. Dressed up pretty nice, and played a couple school dances, and then we said, if we're going to go anywhere, we got to get us a singer. So my dad, who was an obstetrician in the Washington area, he said, "You know, I have a patient whose son sings." And he had tried out for the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. Mrs. Vorhauer, his name is Tommy, and she told me he's going to be singing up at his high school in a thing called Bye Bye Birdie. So Dave and Don and I load up in the car. We scoot on up there just in time to hear Tommy sing, standing in the back of the room. Show gets over. We catch old Tommy and we say, "Hey, Tom, how about going and get a pizza with us?" We took him over to Cleve's Pizza, Fairfax Circle, and sat down and ordered pizza and talked to him about joining the band. After a little bit of talking, he decided that why not give it a try?
Well, I was quite surprised that they had Jim and the boys had invited me over to talk about being in a band. I was currently in a band, and we had a lot of gigs going and playing a lot of places, but I saw an opportunity to join a new band and make a new sound, and Jim was so enthusiastic about the Apollos. I thought I'd really like to try this. So we set up an audition for me to go up to Jimmy's, and I remember pulling up to his house, this huge house with a circular driveway, and I thought I made the right decision because I pulled my old car up in the front of the house, and I walked in, and he had all these fabulous instruments set up in the living room, and that's when I started to feel real good about my decision. We picked out some songs, I started singing. They liked me, I liked them, and that was the beginning of me joining the Apollos.
Before you joined the band, we were an instrumental band, okay?
That's right.
And all of a sudden, Tommy's in the group, Tommy's singing, and all of a sudden, everybody who never wanted to sing before, everybody wants to sing.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's right.
So we all started to sing. It was like contagious. And before you know it, we were doing Beach Boys songs that nobody else was doing in the area. And
Yeah.
it just became so much fun.
And the harmonies were fantastic. These guys could sing harmonies and just, it was wonderful.
And I remember one of the very first gigs that we ever had, we had an opportunity to play at the high school. And we were going to make them an offer of, what we would charge to play for the dance. And we got our heads together and thought, we're so happy to have this job. We would do
That's
it for
right.
nothing, but we can't charge nothing.
That's right.
But we don't want to charge too little because then they won't take us seriously. So maybe we should up the price a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
And we did, and we put our bid in, and they chose us. And we got our first major
That's
job.
exactly right. That's exactly right. That's great.
I don't remember how much we made though.
$150.
Was it? Okay.
$150.
That was big money in those days.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Well, it was quite a privilege, for a young musician, but to be able to play, to be asked, to come into a group was a real honor. And back in those days when music was fresh and new, I used to say we had a drummer on every corner and a guitar player, all the way down the block, and garage doors started opening up and basements started opening up and they were being filled with this new fresh sound that was coming into America. And so being in a band, being a drummer, timing is everything. And we came along at the right time and we filled the need and kids were coming to dances, to sock hops, and it was very fortuitous gathering at the time to come together. And now to be together for half of a century, restoring that same sense of excitement and love that's been bonded as a group, as a team, as brothers in a band.
That's right.
That's what it really exceeds even the music itself, is the character and the development that you have as friends.
Right.
That's what I take from it.
We did a lot of sock hops and things as we were developing, and we had some great leaders at our high school at George C. Marshall, and that was Dr. George Horan, who was the band director, who was not only brilliant as a director, but he was also the most versatile person that I'd ever met. And his thought was, we can integrate a dance band with a rock group and turn out some of the best music you've ever heard. And to me, that was one of the highlights of what we did at the start of the Apollos. He invited us to a concert where we worked together and played the school's dance band with the Apollos. And I tell you what, from that day forward, any time that there was a show going on at George C. Marshall High School where they would, any kind of performance that they were putting on, they would try and integrate it with our band and add a couple of extra nights to the show. And it didn't matter what they charged, the place would be packed. And we always did them for free unless they did it on a Friday or a Saturday night where we'd normally get paid. Mm-hmm. And they would go ahead and pay us our regular rate to play those nights because they had already picked up a couple extra days during the week and the house was full every night. So it was great. I mean, all those kids that we knew and everybody in town, even the fathers and mothers, they were cheering and yelling for us. It was great. It was a good feeling, wasn't it, Dave?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Holy mackerel. We were fortunate enough to be included in a battle of the bands in the the area of all Northern Virginia, and there were a lot of bands. And I would speculate that they had 2 or 3 different places where they were auditioning, and then they were eliminating down to, I believe, for the major show, there were 8 or 10 groups. weren't there?
Eight groups.
8 groups. And we made it in the 8. We were number 7, the way they picked us. I guess I drew a 7. Everybody drew a number when we went on.
Yeah, I remember you drew it.
And I drew a 7, and I go, oh, that's my lucky number. Green and number 7.
Yeah.
And we had our tuxes on that night. White coats, black pants. These little, what do you call them, Tommy?
Little
Collars that just came around the...
They weren't cummerbund. Little, I don't know what the ties were.
Well,
Little
like a
tie.
cross tie.
And we lined up on that band, and we came out and opened up with, I believe it was one of Tommy's favorites. And tell them what you told the guys to do with the lights, Tommy.
Well, we had actually done one other song, and then when our time
That's right, that's right.
when our time came, I think it was a Beach Boys song we did that night, and then we were supposed to do one more song. It was down to 4 guys, 4 bands then, because we made that cut. And I went to the fellow working the lights and the curtain. I said, because we all had the white jackets on, and I said, do me a favor. I said, when the curtain opens up, have the blue lights on, would you please? He said, sure, kid, I got this. And the song that we had chosen to do, which we had worked on, was called Mr. Lonely. And it had a fantastic beat. And Don started off with the guitar, playing the lead, and it was so cool the way he played it. And we all started. The music was just with the lights blue, and I started singing, and you could see the faces of the judges down in front. They're all going like that because they had never heard anything like that. The harmony that Jimmy and I had together, and the music, the different type of music, the way it was played, and we won. We won the Battle of the Bands, beat all those bands.
We couldn't believe it either. We had built the stage for Wayne, and he sat up about this high.
Yes, he did. I remember that now.
Mr. Sachs, the shop teacher, ordered the legs and stuff for that table, and my sister sewed a red velvet curtain that went all the way around that thing. And Wayne was way up here with us, and we had those amps down front. And I remember afterwards our manager saying to us that when we stepped out on the stage, Tommy out front, and the way we were poised in the back, the 3 of us, and Wayne right up behind us, that this isn't even fair because these boys are professionals. All of our steps were together. When we went to the mics, we went right to the mics, all the equipment. And I remember my dad overhearing somebody say, I think somebody said those boys got over $10,000 worth of equipment up there. And of course, we didn't have that much money in that stuff by any means, but we kept our stuff good. We were a clean-cut band. When we won that, the next day in the school paper it read, Homeboys did good. There was a big article about how we went in and beat all these bands, and that we were chosen #1 out of all of Northern Virginia, and we have a record contract with what was it downtown to cut a record.
Edgewood Recording Studio.
Edgewood Recording Studio, and a week's gig at Max Pipe and Drum in Georgetown. And from that day on, and this is the truth, anything we wanted to do in the high school, us 4, was in collaboration with the high school. They let us practice in the hallways of the school outside the band room in the mornings before school, keep our equipment in there. We were like a team, a ball game team to them, because in the area, within a week, we were at #1 on the charts and all of the radio stations playing in the Washington area on both sides of the record. Our manager told us that it was a double X on both sides. That meant play very often on those songs. Everywhere we went, we couldn't keep enough records in the store.
I was telling the boys that to be riding down the highway, a high school kid, in my '53 Chevy and my old radio, and have That's the Brakes come on the radio with your date right beside you was the absolute greatest feeling.
Yeah, but in the early days, though, we were focused largely on improving ourselves and improving our music and
That's
our lot of
exactly
life.
right.
And even when we did start getting paid for gigs, we took a lot of that money and turned it around and put it back into new equipment. Better
That's right.
guitars, better
That's right.
amps, better drums, better PAs, so that we could do a better show. And that's, for us, that's what it was about more than anything else. Not so much, being at the top of the craft, but it was, doing better than what we're doing yesterday. So that's really what we focused on, and it helped us a lot.
We owned our own label. We paid for all of our records out of everything that we earned. And we got all of the profit from every sale because that belonged to us.
I'll just start off by saying that when we played at Max, it was fantastic. We play a set, and there was a group down there playing called Leroy Tail and the 4Ks.
Yeah, I remember that.
We play a set, they played a set. We play a set, they played a set. And then they were phenomenal. And I told the lead singer, I said, "You guys are great." And he heard us play a set, and he came up and said, "You kids are going to go far. You guys are great." So it was fun, the camaraderie between bands, even though you compete, but there's a different kind of camaraderie in bands, and it's really cool. Well, anyway, the Leroy Taylor and the 4Ks moved on, and we played at the Keg all summer. Well, the manager at the Keg not the Keg, Max, asked us to play on for the summer.
We packed that place.
We packed it. The line was such a cool feeling to come in there to play, and the line would go up the sidewalk, around the building, down the sidewalk to come in and see the Apollos play.
Down there in
They were
Georgetown.
coming to hear us play.
To hear us play.
Coming to hear us high school boys play.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And my parents came down. My parents came down and sat in that noisy place in one of those little tables, and to hear me play. And that was such an honor to have my parents come down.
The management at Max, at the same time they liked us packing the place, they were very leery of us. Because Wayne and I were both 17.
And I was underage
Okay.
too.
And they were watching us very carefully to see that we weren't drinking, for
That's
obvious reasons.
They had to sneak us in the back.
Well, we were
Yeah.
all under 18 when we played there. So they were all watching us, and during a break or something, the cook, if you remember, do us hamburgers and stuff, give us a Coke or something, some water. That's it. But Tommy's right. There were so many people that came to that. I'll tell you what, guys. As hard as it was with the deal with Paramount and turning them down and them doing what they did to us after that during the payola years and all of that, I'd rather not look back at the career as on a bad light, but rather say, what became of us from all of that? How did we turn out? What happened in our lives, and what brought us back together after so long? And we've made even better music now and we're getting ready to put out our 50th anniversary album. And before we gave up and went to school and went to war and all of this stuff, we added another member to the band, and I want to mention him today because he passed away on May the 19th. His name was Dwight James, and he was probably one of the best honky-tonk players in the world that I've ever heard, and a Hammond B3. He was the very best. He was the best.
He had played with a lot of big bands.
Yes, he had.
And I can remember the night that he came in up to Jim's, and he had his trailer, and on the back of his trailer he had this big Hammond B3 organ, and
The big Leslie Tower.
and he had just left the band called the Titans, and he had the Titans was still painted on the side of the trailer. Well, we went out there to help him bring his stuff in, and I was leery because I'd never seen anything that big in a band. But he plugged that thing in, and he goes over and he starts to play it, and I go, we now have a band.
We had an opportunity to come back together about 3 years ago. Every one of us in the group was struggling with something at that point, I might say, in their life that needed some help and some guidance from above. Somehow, all of us, including Dwight, who had muscular dystrophy, and as his wife had told me, for 11 years there, that he had given up hope. And when he got the call for me to ask him if he wanted to join with the Apollos, that we had figured out a way that we could record and send wave files, and everybody can record from all over the country. She called me about a week and a half later, and she said, "Jim, I want you to know that Dwight is a changed man now. Every morning he's up at 6 o'clock and he's downstairs smiling. He's playing this organ all day long. He's happy all day long. He's just, and he always was a sweet, happy fellow." And she said, "You gave me back my old Dwight." And I thank God that we were able to do that.
In America, we were starting to see a new industry. We were going to the moon. We were very competitive with another country, Russia, in the world, to be the first to reach there.
That's right.
We made the comparison between sports groups and a para group, known as bands in high schools. Kids, they want to be a part. We all want to be part of a team. We want to have team colors. Be true to your school. Was one of the popular songs then. And competition is what drove people to get better. And as Don said, you work hard, you practice hard, you do your best. In those days, you didn't get awards for participating. You wanted to win the prize. And so just like a sports team, you had to get in there and you had to pour yourself into it. You had to sweat, you had to bleed a little bit. And competition was a good thing, And so there was competition between the high schools. They would have different groups. Each high school would have a different group. And, come to the weekends, everybody would be talking, well, who's playing where? And that's where we want to go, because that's who we follow. And we think they're the best band. And somebody else said, no, we're the best band. And so, you would get together and you would make each other better. Well, Apollo was a Greek god. He was the god of music, and he was the god of masculinity. So as guys, we kind of attached ourselves to that. But of course, it was part of the Apollo space program. And
That was the main theme right there. We were all about them.
Well, we'd go out and hand out flyers.
Yeah, I remember.
And who
the
did we
flyers.
get to hand those flyers out?
Our girlfriends.
Well, we did those too. I'd ride around town, I'd catch the paper boys, and I'd pay them $5 if they'd take a stack of those sheets that we had made up where we were gonna be playing and put one in every paper. And I'd tell them I'd come back next week and give you another $5 if any of the people show up with the paper at the shows and you put them back in the paper, I'll give you another $5. And we print them on different colored paper and different colored print, so we get two colors, wasn't it, Dave?
That's right.
You know, we changed that up. People knew us everywhere. When we moved from Fairfax, we were way out in the sticks where I lived before we came into McLean, and we had a little country store at the end of the street, and it was made with that tar paper that looked like bricks, you know, on the side.
Yeah.
And I remember Dad, once the record came out, he came and he got me, he said, "Jim, so-and-so from that store called me and he wants you to bring out 100 records." He said, "Old people out there in the country are wanting your song and they keep coming by the store wanting to buy the records." So we kept ordering records and taking them out and putting them in the slots, and it was a lot of fun. The school started giving back. They gave back to us. George Horan would help us with things, organizing what and how to present ourselves. My music teacher would take us in after school and work with us on our harmonies, how to present ourselves in singing. And it wasn't just the Apollos, it was the whole school and community seemed to get behind us, the families, because here's a clean-cut bunch of boys. Mm-hmm. These aren't boys with the long hairs and trying to get in trouble. These are boys, you know, with the A's and B's in schools, and they're dressing good, they're looking good, they got an image, and they stand for something.
There's always funny stories about bands, and one that sticks out in my mind, I got to tell about the mule, and we had
The what?
the mule that came out on the road when we were headed to Ocean City, Maryland.
Mule.
Yeah, I almost hit it. Everybody was sleeping in the car, and here I was driving, and you know, the other guys are sleeping in my '55 Chevy, and we got the trailer, and I'm driving down the road, almost Ocean City, Maryland. We played one gig, packed up the car and a trailer. We decided, well, we don't need to go home. Let's just go on to Ocean City, Maryland. So we drove in at that night. That was fine for everybody except for me. I'm trying to drive. I'm driving down there, almost Ocean City, Maryland. I see, what's in the road? And it was a mule. And I slammed on the brakes, and the trailer's going like this. And the guys, all of a sudden, they woke up and they're screaming. And I went off the road and into the cornfield and then back up onto the highway. Nobody got hurt, but pulled over the side of the road, and we all looked at each other, and we all started, whew, man, and then we started laughing, and they said, well, one of them said, well, at least we didn't hit the mule.
Well, Country Boy was probably the first song that I wrote that I was actually serious about writing a song. And at the time, I was still learning how to play guitar. I was really into the Ventures because they were moderately hot at the time. They had hit records and we didn't. So I listened to the Ventures a lot, and I pretty much picked up their style and what they like to do. And I tried to emulate that, and you learn by emulating. And Country Boy was really my way of doing a Ventures song, the best Ventures song that they never recorded. So that's really what that was all about, and I'm happy that it made the B-side of the record. I never had it in mind for being a massive hit, but I like the song. As far as the other stuff I've been writing more recently, probably the one that I like the best is called Magic All Day Long.
Yeah.
And that one, thanks to Jason Price, has turned into a really, really nice record. And it was a song that I put together, and I made a demo track of it. And it was one of these situations where, well, I think it's a good song. I have no idea what the other guys in the band will think. They may like it, they may not. We may never record this song, who knows? But I just kind of tossed it out on the table and let it go from there. And everybody seemed to be blown away by it, and that blew me away. So we started working on that, and the way I do demo tracks, I don't really have a firm arrangement already set up in my mind. I just kind of play a short introduction that is pretty much meaningless, and then go through verses and choruses, and generally don't even put an instrumental break in it, just because I want other people to contribute to the arrangement as well. So we had a lot of really great ideas. The record, as it turned out in the end, is actually very different from the way I heard the song in my head when I first heard it. And it's far, far better now than it was when I first heard it. It seems like I seem to have the ability to visualize melodies in my head, and they sort of come together, and I write them down. Sometimes I turn them into songs, and sometimes I don't. But it's one of those things where I've learned to do it over the years. You know, if you hear something in your head, if you like it, you write it down. Sometimes I sit down at a piano keyboard and just start noodling around, and before you know it, a melody pops out. And sometimes I write those down, and they become compositions as well. But that's really the way that I like to write. The song really comes out of my imagination, and I can't really point to any one source for inspiration. But whenever I do it, it turns out fun. It turns out good. And if it's fun, it is good. Come Follow Me, as it turns out, was a kind of a challenge from a friend of mine. He was also a guitar player, and he liked to play chords against open strings on his guitar, particularly the E strings. So his habit was to take a capo and slap it somewhere on the guitar neck, and then start playing open E strings and then other chords against that. So he kind of challenged me to write a song that way, with open strings. So I thought about that for a while, and I started putting some things together. And I thought, well, I can kind of do that, but not completely. You know, there are a couple of places where I actually do put my fingers on the E string. But that's really what that song was about. And I kind of put together the words just before I started recording it. But the song itself, I had in mind kind of a folk song. You know, a kind of a down-to-earth, one person singing to another kind of a song. And again, the recording came out different from that. And that's okay, because it came out better. But the song itself really started out that way. And it was another one of those songs where, yeah, I kind of like this song. It took me a long time to write it, probably 3 years. But I just kind of tossed that one out and said, hey guys, see if you like this song. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay. And it turned out to be one of those songs where everybody was really surprised and really liked it, which of course really surprised me because I didn't expect that at all. So it turned out to be really great.
In the USA, the song I was looking to do was a kind of a takeoff of the Beach Boy theme, but I was sick and tired of the way our Congress and the government was running at the time. And they seemed more concerned about themselves than they did about getting anything done for us, the people. I wanted to include everybody in the band as best I could to have their own stake in it and feel like they had an ownership so that we could continue the synergy that we used to have years ago. And this song to me felt like a Wayne Grove song. And we turned it over to Wayne to sing it. And he did a marvelous job.
Well, you know, you want to do it in one take, and the first take is the one you do, and that's it. You drop it and you go. But you know, seldom does it ever work out that way. And so, you know, I was together with my tech manager here, Jason, and we must have gone over that song 40 times, you know, and at this age, you know, your voice starts to get a little raspy and everything, and so it kind of contributed, I think, to the song to do that, because you just start to just get loose and you give up and you just give the best you can, and sometimes that's when the music really finds itself.
When we recorded that song down here that day, Wayne wasn't here with us at all. I think Dave and Don and I were here recording, and I sang that song. And when I sang that song, at the very end of the song, where we were talking about in the USA, let's pray for all this, the phone rang. And you hear the phone ring. And so we went and we unhooked every phone in the basement down here. And then I'm just going to turn it over to Wayne to tell you what happened when you went and recorded it 1,000 miles away 2 months later at his house with him singing. And it's still on that record.
The end of the song, as Jim was talking about, there's a part in there where it starts to fade out, and I did some ad-libbing from the words that were written in there, not knowing that this occasion had happened here about this phone call that rang at this particular part. And when I did this, I was talking about answer the call, you know, justice for all, answer the call, the USA. And just when I said answer the call, the phone rang, and I had no idea that it was at the same time that 1,000 miles, I don't know if it's 1,000 miles or not,
It's over 1,000 miles
away, that the phone rang at the same part when they were putting the scratch track together for this song. The phone rang at the same time as it did at my place, at our place in Shenandoah Valley, in the same spot. My wife Barbara called me in that exact same spot, and the phone rang, and Jason and I looked at each other and we said, leave it in there. And then we found out that it happened twice, and we both looked to the sky and got kind of the goosebump thing going on. You know, the Apollos was an American band.
Absolutely.
And you know, we love this country, and we are hurt by the division in this country that's caused, and we wanted to see the people get back into the role of being active in their government and enforcing what our forefathers had originally intended, you know, about being one nation under God. And so the song was very strong for me to try and get a voice into the public community that hey, us old guys, we care about this country. You know, we don't want to see it go downhill. We're going to fight for it. You know, we're going to give our all for it. And for us, the way to express that was through our love, through music.
A lot of people don't realize how that song was recorded. They listen to the song and they say, okay, that's great. All of you guys are in the same room recording at the same time. Finally, right? Wrong. Nothing could be further from the truth. What we started out with was a demo track, and each of us played our part against the demo track. Excuse me. And we wound up taking those tracks and sending them up here to Jim, where they all got mixed together. We never had all of us in the same room at any time. In fact, most tracks were recorded thousands of miles away from each other. So when we finally heard the final mix, we were all quite surprised, because a lot of the things that we had recorded, which kind of flowed for our particular instrument, got chopped into pieces and reassembled in a different order. And that was what was so surprising about the whole thing, because it worked so much better doing it that way, that we hadn't even considered that it was done that way to fix problems that were inherent in the tracks that had been recorded. Some parts that we thought were going to fit together didn't fit together quite as well as we thought when we tried to put them all together. So it was actually done that way to solve a problem. But what came out of it was so much better that we were all just blown away by it.
I want to say it's wonderful. It's wonderful that we all were able to get together after all this time. And you know, we've recorded at a distance. We've kept the music going,
Yes.
but we haven't actually been together in the same room at the same time. And it's just so wonderful that we can do that finally.
We're all here together.
We're all here together, and that's
That's
what's important. Thanks to everybody for being here, and thanks so much, Jim, for setting this whole thing up.
It's all we